Welcome back to Let the Journey Begin. I'm your host, Jason Waller, alongside a new co-host today, Mr. Alex Meschi.
Yes, sir. Filling in.
What's up, bro? We
How you
got
doing?
our executive director of the foundation with us. Hilary is out of commission for today, so Alex is going to jump in here and help us tackle today's episode. Thanks for coming on here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Figure we try something new. Fill in for Hilary. We're now on YouTube, so if you haven't checked that out yet, go check out the Red Songbird Foundation, and you can follow Let the Journey Begin. Hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, we will. We'll still be having our regular episodes through podcasts come out every Thursday, and then on Fridays we will be having the YouTube come out. So if you go to YouTube, search "Let the Journey Begin" in the search bar, and you guys will see us there. That way you can watch us. But Alex, what's been going on with you this week, man?
This week has been stock market craziness, just following that whole thing. But I do have some good news.
We have some people that can help you with that.
Yeah. So, during the pandemic and COVID, we were talking about how mental health and binge use of substances was going through the roof. But I did read a nice news article over the weekend and that we're going to get some help with the struggling individuals that are needing help in the form of more community colleges and universities putting out more courses for substance abuse counselors. So they're going to be adding some reinforcements to our Army to try and do something about this, because for those that don't know, the statistics now, 1 in 3 Americans are binge drinking, and substance abuse is through the roof as a result of that as well.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. The other newest statistic that came out, I was talking to a friend of ours today, is that somebody is dying from just an opiate overdose every 11 minutes. So we're up against a lot, man, and it's a crazy time that we're in, and we need all the support and help that we can get. And a lot of people are struggling right now, more so than I've ever seen. And it's very unfortunate, and it's really sad. The world is in a lot of hurt right now, going through a lot of trauma, going through a lot of issues, a lot of substance abuse, mental health issues. And, that's why we're here, and we're hoping to provide some insight, some relatability, some connection with you guys. But more importantly, a safe and trusted environment for our guest. So, Alex, why don't you introduce who we got on today?
So today we have Miss Jenny Leone, who's going to talk to us about her story and give us some hope and some steps to take in the right direction for those that may be looking along the same lines or maybe stuck in a point of stagnation. But we're going to try and help dig out of that hole and get back onto recovery.
Boom, Jenny.
Hey, how's it going, you guys?
Good. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
How's your day going?
My day's busy. I have a little kitten, so she's been keeping me up at night. I get up at 5, I work out by 6, and then I'm already on the phone with work. So it's been a busy morning.
Oh, man, you don't waste any time.
I don't waste any time.
Sound like Alex over here on the stock market.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us. So our first question I would like to know for you, Jenny, is what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, man. Well, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And then that changed to a news broadcaster. And then at one point, I legally wanted to change my name to Vegas because I thought I was going to be a Vegas showgirl.
Okay. Wow.
And then I wanted to be an actor. So yeah, I kind of went through some ups and downs and peaks and valleys of who I wanted to become.
So when you were young, though, originally wanting to become, whether it was the news anchor before it went into the Vegas stuff, right? Let's go with the news anchor and the veterinarian. How old were you around that time when you were wanting that to aspire to be something like that?
Really young. I was probably 9, 10 years old. I always had animals growing up, and it gave me a sense of security. I had a lot of other things going on in my life. And I think subconsciously, I would relate animals to happiness and a sense of calm. So, I was very young, 9 or 10 years old.
No, animals are both Alex and I are animal lovers. I know Hilary, if she was on here as well, is a big animal lover. But when did that transition? Obviously wanting to be a veterinarian and then transitioning to, you said, a Vegas showgirl. Can you talk about what happened in there in that transition?
If I'm going to be honest about it, I think what happened as I look back and reflect on my childhood, I had a very traumatic childhood. There was a lot of abuse in my family, particular one family member that went on for many, many years. And so at a very young age, 11, 12 years old, I started using drugs. And so I left home and went out on my way. And I think what happened in my teenage years when I started wanting to be a Vegas showgirl and these things, I just wanted to escape. I just wanted to escape and go do something else completely. And I didn't really have any sense of self. All I knew was the experiences that I had been having, and for whatever reason, that just sounded like a fun thing to do, was to just take off.
So in terms of talking about just taking off and escaping, what did that lead to? Did you actually become the Vegas showgirl or something in that industry, or did you switch gears and go somewhere else?
No, I mean, in a way, but not a Vegas showgirl. So through my teenage years, I struggled a lot with drugs and alcohol. I was running with the wrong people. My boyfriend was a drug dealer, and just was, living from house to house kind of thing. And I somehow, though, still had a part of me that really wanted to do well. And so I would put myself in acting classes. I was in theater classes. I went to a different modeling agency in Vancouver, and was trying to do that stuff on the side. And so I was booking little shows here and there. I got in with the union in Canada, and I ended up coming out to LA at 19 with a suitcase to come live the dream and do a TV show. So
you were in Canada originally?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where you grew up, was in Canada.
I grew up in Vancouver. I was there until I was 19, and then came out here.
I was going to ask, so based on your experience between being, in Canada versus the United States, were there any differences that you have seen in that time? Like whether it's societal or what culture's like up there versus down here? I know that in the media and stuff down here, a lot of drugs and alcohol is almost, popularized and celebrated, in the media, whether it's you're watching a rap music video or a movie or even an advertisement, a Budweiser commercial or something. Is it similar how it's portrayed here in America and Canada, or did you experience something else?
Yeah, it was pretty much the exact same thing. If not, in my mind, from what my experience was, maybe even worse, because where I was raised, it was these very small little towns, and there wasn't a lot to do. So it was just the norm to be going out and drinking and doing drugs and experimenting at a young age with different things. But yeah, it seemed pretty comparable. What I can say, though, is it was a huge culture shock when I came out here, because Canadians are known to be really nice and friendly. And I'm not saying you guys aren't friendly, okay? Don't get me wrong. But when I came out here, even if I was like, hi, and like waved to somebody, or they kind of like, what is wrong with that girl? Why is she doing that? So it was a culture shock in that sense.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. So going back though, I mean, you obviously endured a lot. I mean, you said your first time use was around, did you say 10 or 11?
Yeah, 11.
11 years old. So, I mean, you obviously started at a very young age. And I mean, I appreciate you being open and vulnerable about the traumatic experience you went through. And I'm sorry that you had to face that, but that drove you down a road to, again, from that age to 19 to coming out here. Where did that road end up taking you?
Yeah, so I think what's really important is to be able to recognize your underlying issues that bring you into addiction. And for me, my underlying issues were my trauma at a very young age. I feel that was a triggering event in my life that led me down the path that I went down. For me, it was numbing myself out to not have to deal with how I was feeling. And I started doing that at a very young age. Suicide attempts, just trying to run away from whatever I could. And so it led me down a really dark path. And by the time I had come out here, I was so just down in that rabbit hole of addiction. And it was scary because I was still, quote unquote, a functioning addict. I was out doing things. I was working. I had a car. I had a house. I had money. I had all these things. But I was dying while I was still alive on the inside. I was completely numbed out. I wasn't dealing with any of my trauma. I was carrying around an immense amount of anger, resentment, and pain from my past. I hadn't come to a place of forgiveness or even really wanting to process what had happened to me. I was just mad and I was a victim. And I think it's really important to be able to get to a point where we can recognize the underlying issues and then realize you don't want to be a victim anymore. You want to be a survivor. And how are you going to do that? So it took me a long time. I used actively for over 20 years. In LA, up and down, trying to do a movie part here or there, trying to go do a one-liner on a TV show. And that led me down a path where I just wanted to make money and just be numbed out. So I got involved in another industry. I was contracted with Playboy. Jenna Jameson was one of my best friends. I'd be running around with her and it was all bad. I had an AKA, and who I am today is nothing compared to what I was before, meaning I had no self-worth, no confidence. And it's funny because when I look back on it, I think, I was so easy and just so willing to get undressed on camera or do whatever it was that I did. And I thought, this is so cool. I can go do this topless magazine and I can make all this money. And it's so cool because I don't care to be topless. And I didn't recognize what that really meant. And that meant that I had been traumatized as a child and carried that into my adulthood. They say most people that go into that line of work, they have been traumatized as a child,
Right.
Sexually is usually what the case is. So, I didn't have any sense of self. And I went down that path for a very long time. I had my son in 2008, went into rehab when he was 8 months old. Came out of that and did everything I could to try to not go back to that industry. I started. I'm fully covered in tattoos under this, so I started tattooing myself, thinking I wouldn't be able to book any jobs. I was still able to book jobs. It was all these excuses and reasons. It was that in itself was an addiction too. But then I finally got sober 4.5 years ago and completely turned my life around. But it took getting to that point of complete surrender and willingness and.
What was that? I mean, again, there's so much I want to connect on that, but what was that turning point? I can relate to that self-sabotaging and looking at, I'm going to do this, and this to try to change this. But in reality, I was not taking the simple steps of the surrender, being fully open and honest with myself. What was that point though for you where you're just like, okay, because it sounds like you're in 2008, right? You had your son. I can relate to that. Having a daughter. Mm-hmm. I was literally on the first floor at Hogue in detox where my wife's water broke and she was up at the fourth floor having birth to our child. And that wasn't enough, for me to stop. So what was that turning point for you?
Right. And I think a bottom for everyone, it's different. Like I had so many bottoms that people would have thought that's the bottom, but it was more of a moment of spiritual awakening in my mind of just complete surrender. There was many other times it seemed way worse, but this moment, I had this clarity. I was at an ex-boyfriend's house. I had a gun in one hand and I had my life in the other hand. And I knew that if I didn't choose life right in that moment and get help, that I was going to die. And so at that moment, I chose to live and I went into treatment and that's it after that. So, it's when I had my son, I thought I would stay sober for him. A lot of people think they'll stay sober for their children. I know this sounds so selfish and awful, but that's what addiction is. It's selfish and it's trying to kill us. And we can't stay sober for our children. We have to stay sober for ourselves first and foremost. So, yeah.
So what changed, or how was your moment of clarity different from the first time you went to treatment versus the last time you stopped using and have been sober since?
Well, what I like to preach and what I find with the people I work with is that anybody can get sober, right? Physically sober. It's uncomfortable, but it's possible. But I think finding your purpose and finding what you're passionate about, that's what will keep you sober. I feel if you can't find what brings you happiness and what makes you feel that you're contributing in whatever way that is, you're not going to stay sober. So for me, when I went into treatment this last time, I knew as soon as I went into treatment that I had to work in this field one way or another and be of service and help others. And if that meant that I could just help one person not go down the road that I went down, then my life was a success. And so that's what I did while I was in treatment. I went back to school. I did drug and alcohol studies. I did every course I possibly could in human services. And I started working in treatment 9 months later as a case manager, got certified as a life coach, sober companion, everything across the board that way. And it's just been that life of purpose since then.
That's so amazing. So after, like, I mean, what a testament. I mean, you've gone through so much. I wish we had 2 more hours to kind of look at the whole scope of, everything that you've gone through. Cause I think there's a lot of people that can relate to what you've gone through. And I think more and more people are coming out around these types of things, around trauma, and especially childhood trauma and abuse. But focusing on the positive stuff, what is it that you do today to sustain and maintain the life that you have?
So it got to the point for me now that I have so many things to look forward to every day that I would have so many things to lose if I went out. I really make sure that my life is balanced. I practice a lot of self-care. I have a routine that I pretty much stick to every single day. And I have a job at the Edge Treatment Center where I do all their clinical outreach that I absolutely love. I'm able to go out and build those relationships and watch people's lives change. I used to think before, if I was to die today, who would be at my funeral?
Right.
Back when I was in my addiction, and nobody, or
Right.
people that knew me as my AKA, or no one really knew me.
Right.
And so now I think, man, like, God forbid something was to happen and I was to die, I would have all these people that I've impacted. And so that alone is just an amazing feeling. I'm having my son, having that relationship, having a program that I believe in, walking a spiritual path. There's just so many things that I'm so grateful for. And I feel that if I constantly live in a state of gratitude, then nothing can really affect me. It's that mindset. Instead of being like, why me? It's, what can this teach me? What
Correct.
can I learn? So
That's so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a transformation going from, wanting to be a vet eventually to becoming a Vegas showgirl to now what you're doing, making such an impact. I mean, being on TV and stuff, yeah, you're on the screen for potentially millions and billions of people, but realistically, you're not going to really impact them, I would say, in the way that you are today, which is phenomenal. I mean, it's truly amazing.
Well, thank you. I feel the same way too. I feel my impact on the world now is where I want to be forever, and I'm humbled by it. And the things that I wanted before, whatever they were, materialistic, things for the wrong reasons, living in ego, I've shed that part of me. And now I'm just organically me, and I'm authentic, and I'm genuine, and I am who I am. And I have this past, and people have skeletons in their closet, and mine are out for everyone to see. And that's okay. It's okay to be who I am and be relatable and be able to connect with people. And know that no matter what, at the end of the day, as long as I'm doing the right thing and being true to myself, everything's going to be okay.
I mean, what you just said, just is the pure and, most truthful way of showing that growth in the healing process is taking place. Like you said, being able to be open and talk about it and not have that shame or guilt associated with it. You're not dwelling on your past, but you're remembering it and reflecting on it to utilize that as your growth and to show people that there is hope.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a very important factor. So I have a question for you though. Like if, for a lot of those people that are out there, I mean, because again, as you're saying that stuff happened to you at a very young age. If there's people that are listening, which I know there are, that have gone through something and they're still in this, what would be some advice that you would give them?
Some advice that I would give is that asking for help is strength. Asking for help is courageous. Asking for help is the strongest thing you can do. When I was younger, I thought those things were weaknesses, if I couldn't handle what was going on. And just to know you're not alone. I felt so alone because I didn't reach out. And just to know you're not alone, that you can ask for help, to go talk to a friend and have that self-worth to be able to try to move on from this, because living with it for so long and dealing with it at a later age does nothing but really long-term damage.
How did you heal, your childhood trauma? What were the steps that you took?
I had my own spiritual program that I worked. I still to this day see a therapist weekly.
Wow.
Every week. Extensive EMDR therapy for me worked well. That's just my experience. And I got to a place of forgiveness. I had a really hard time. I struggled a lot with forgiving people that did bad things to me in my life. and being able to have the mindset of not necessarily forgiving them for me, but to turn it over to my higher power and let them deal with it so I can let go of the weight. I did not realize how much these people were still controlling my life because I was allowing them to, because I was holding on to this anger.
Right.
But once you forgive and let go of that anger and are able to move on, you don't have to forget what happened. You don't have to be friends with that person, but to let it go and heal from that through therapy, through talking to people, through support groups. You need to do those steps in order to heal and become happy.
For sure. So would you say that the trauma is healed? Again, is somebody I would like to even understand more, is like, would you say that the work that you've done, the trauma is healed? Or is it going to be like a program of recovery where it's something that you're going to constantly have to do for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm human, and I don't think we ever truly 100% get over something. I know from my experience, just in relationships, in whatever I'm going through in my life, there obviously is some memory of that. There is the baggage, a little bit, but I feel that I'm able to now identify my emotions and what I'm feeling and my behaviors, and be able to pause and not completely react in that space. It's still always there. It's a part of me. And I honestly like it being a part of me because I'm able to use it to help other people. I don't want to just forget it and tuck it away and it never be there anymore. I think we need to find strength and be able to gather things from that to be able to be a voice to help others.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can speak to the relation on the awareness, because, in me seeing a therapist doing DBT therapy, a lot of it had to do with awareness of my thought process and or my reaction to whatever is triggering. And once you have that awareness down, when things pop up, whether it's, something gets heated or a trigger or, previous trauma or whatever, that awareness, I feel like, gives you a better ground to process it in. And when you're able to do that, I mean, to the extent, I don't think I'll ever be recovered from my childhood traumas, but now that I'm aware of how they affect me, I can now change the reaction to how they affect me into creating that long-term, I guess, recovery program or what have you. But it all stems from knowing where it's coming from, I feel like.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And triggers are just emotions, right? And being able to push through being uncomfortable and get through that and recognize it. I always practice pausing before I react to any situation, even in my own personal romantic relationship. If I'm feeling emotional and I want to react, I'll sit on it. I'll say, we need to come back to this when we both have calmed down. I think being able to do that really helps and not emotionally react. Yeah.
What are some other tools that you have for triggers? Because again, people are facing a lot of triggers right now, whether it's with isolation, loss of job, boredom. I mean, there's so many different things people are going through. Do you have any other tools relating to triggers or even obsessions?
Yeah, I think finding what you enjoy doing, having hobbies, having a creative outlet. For myself, when I'm feeling really triggered, when I need to get into solution, I have days where I still, even though I have several years sober, I still feel very overwhelmed and uncomfortable in my skin. And for me, going and working out, going and doing a boot camp, going and driving down. I love to drive down to the beach, going for a run, calling someone close to me. I have a list of people. I think it's very important to have a speed dial of 5-10 people on your phone that that will answer anytime that you call them, and be able to call those people and be able to have creative outlets, whether it's art, painting, whatever it is that makes you happy, to be able to get into motion. For me, I have a hard time sitting and meditating and just sitting in it. But if I can be in motion doing something I enjoy, I think that's really helpful for triggers.
And on that, did any of your program change with COVID and the quarantine lockdowns? Like, did you have to adapt any of that, or did you kind of set up a program that was already in place that you could carry on no matter what happened?
Great question.
Yeah, I had to adapt, and it was challenging for me as well. Isolating, being at home, working remotely, was tough. I like being around people. So I made a point to add certain things into my daily schedule, which I tell people to do now still, because yes, it's the epidemic right now is just horrible. I've seen more overdoses, more people dying, in this last year than I ever have since I got sober. So having that schedule, setting alarms on your phone, knowing that at 5 o'clock, take a shower if you haven't taken a shower, to go out and take a walk for 20 minutes, to have something pop up on your phone, to set different reminders, almost like a sober buddy on your phone, to be able to do these things, to make sure that you're being accountable to yourself and having consistency.
Yeah, that accountable to oneself, that's something I can work on. I mean, I definitely packed on some of the COVID weight that I
me too.
lost at the beginning of COVID, and somehow it came back. So yeah, I can definitely attest to needing to put those walks back on my calendar and on my schedule and just actually, push through it and do it. And once you have it done for a week to 2 weeks, then it almost becomes natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've provided some amazing insight and some really good tangible tools that are simple, and I think it's what I'm taking away from a lot of what you're saying is you've done the work, but you've also created a structure for yourself that works for you, what you can rely on, and it's been beneficial. But you keep it simple in ways. You're not overcomplicating it, because we tend to do that, and it doesn't do us any benefit. But you took the curveballs that were thrown at you, and you put them into place, and you've molded to it, and you can see. I mean, you got a phenomenal head on your shoulders, and you're very intellectual, very intelligent, and you got a lot of creative thoughts around this. And I think you're going to be, the females specifically that are listening to this, even the males, are going to be taking some really good tools away.
Well, thank you.
But before we leave, I got to ask you for one more piece of solution, one more piece of advice. If you were to give all of our listeners one piece of advice for the day, what would your action for the day be for them?
Action for the day would be to be completely open and honest with yourself first and foremost, and to always, always be in a state of gratitude. I think anything can come our way if you're in a state of gratitude.
I love it.
That's great.
Boom. Jenny,
Boom.
thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story with us. And
Thanks for having me.
really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
If people want to find out more about yourself, where can they find you? You also said you work at Edge Treatment Center, correct?
Yeah, so you can go to theedgetreatment.com. You can find me there. Also, my phone number for any sort of client that's looking for help or a loved one, it's 949-328-6897. Thank you.
Awesome. Alex, wow, Jenny was an incredible guest.
Yeah, I don't think I was going to see that coming from a veterinarian, wanting to be a vet to Vegas showgirl. I mean, I could understand the glitz
what was
and
it,
glamour
a vet to a
news anchor
to
a Vegas showgirl, and kind of surpass that a little bit. But I mean, I think her story, if anything, is a testament to a lot of the younger viewers and listeners that are watching this, the ones that have heard about people making money on OnlyFans and this and that. And to me, it just doesn't seem like an avenue that's worth pursuing, because at the end of the day, you just become bankrupt of your self-worth.
I mean, you bring up such a valid point, Alex. I mean, it's almost like when you're in that place of, selling yourself, you are really selling your soul. And, I think some people have to go through those points. Again, as to her, what she experienced at a very young age, being exposed to what she was, she actually had no defense over what she was facing. So she was doing the best she possibly could with what was given to her. And, unfortunately, there's so many people that encounter those types of situations that don't know where to turn. And she was a breath of fresh air and a light for those that are struggling.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is, when you're running around with Jenna Jameson, it's got to be pretty glitzy and glamorous, or at least you're hanging out with people that give you the illusion of that, right? But for her to make that 180 and find her self-worth and transition into helping people and making an impact in that way, I mean, I can't say any more how I'm excited for her and what she's doing now.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it shows if you do the work, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you co-hosting today. Great job. We'll be back next week.